Oh, God.
front of their brains. You know, do you know who always has a date on Valentine's Day? The calendar.
Wow.
Oh.
You know, I've come up with some bad ones, but these are really bad. That's why I'm doing 3 of them.
Oh, shit.
When do bed bugs fall in love? In the spring. And finally, why did the skeleton break up with her boyfriend on Valentine's Day? Her heart wasn't in it. Well, we typically take some time to introduce ourselves. So let's do that. We'll do round table. We'll start over here.
Give it a try.
Hi, good morning. My name is Anthony Castleman. I'm with the ADOT Government Relations Office.
Sai Gundala with Enfra.
Carl Oberg, Ardora. Nikolai Olita and Jacobs.
Todd Sensimino with Wilson and Company.
Adrian Leone Jacobs.
Fadi Jalagi Olson.
Eric Watkins with Aztec.
Ron Swake with Aztec.
Elijah Williams with Will Solutions.
David Lenzer with Burgess and Eiffel. Jeremy Newman, HDR.
Larry Wheeler, CivTech.
Alexis Amatayo with Intratech PSI.
Matthew Puris with Preform.
Matt Reed with Southwest Traffic Engineering.
Bill Ferris with Stantec Consulting.
Dan Marham with Wilson and Company.
Sorry.
Rotation there.
Marcia Miller along with Avenue Consultants.
Greg Haggerty Dibble.
Derek Boland, ADOT Project Management Group.
Vanya Merzlak, 2x.
Jenny Bixby, AECom.
Jennifer Toth, ADOT.
Steve O'Brien, ADOT Project Management Group.
Steve Motion with ADOT.
Scott Omer with WSP.
Thanks. And we have some people online. America.
We have Anthony Sarhan and Thomas Dietering from FHWA, Lisa Freestone, Paul Balch, Paul Wong, Kareem Dada just joined us, Raj Christian, Rob Lemke, and Steve Jimenez is also online.
All
We
right.
get to.
Wow.
I like to watch the screen. It's always good to see Jenny get up this early.
You.
All right, thanks. Any announcements from FHWA?
We do have one, Anthony Sarhan, just give me 1 sec and I can turn him on. Right, Anthony.
All right, thanks, Amerigo. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you, appreciate it. Sorry, wasn't able to attend in person this morning. Really have just 2 quick announcements for discussion. First is a staffing update. We've backfilled the final vacancy that we had on our senior leadership team within the division office. Karina Lopez has joined the Federal Highway Administration as the System Performance Team Leader. Many of you probably knew Karina from her time at ADOT. We're very glad to have her on board. She's been with us for just a little over a week now, so you may run into her with the FHWA hat on these days. Second thing I wanted to bring up was just for awareness, hopefully everybody saw the announcement go out. Federal Highway Administration published a notice of proposed rulemaking in the Federal Register on January 30th. This also had a request for comments. This notice of proposed rulemaking is in regards to updates to 23 CFR Part 172. which governs basically the procurement of architectural and engineering services. There's some technical updates that are being done, some corrections, but the main part that's getting the most attention is it's also updating the regulations to identify how the rules apply for direct recipients that are not state DOTs when they are working on a project that is funded through a discretionary grant administered by the Federal Highway Administration. So sort of a lot to unpack there, but that notice of proposed rulemaking is out right now. We are taking comments through April 1st, I believe it is, of 2024. Those are my updates.
Thanks, Anthony. Jennifer?
Sure, a few updates. You may or may not know that ADOT and many of the state agencies have to go through a continuation process, which means the legislature decides if we continue as an agency or we get absorbed into another agency or so forth. So we've been going through that. We had a Senate committee meeting on Monday. We have a House committee meeting today. We appreciate ACEC's support and signing in support of the agency continuing. So that's been going on. A few staffing changes, as you heard. We lost our ECS manager, and so we'll be looking at that. Mesa Hannah is joining the state engineer's office. She's going to take on some continuous improvement opportunities for Greg, particularly, and some potential technical training. And then Iqbal has moved from CNS over to be a deputy to Paul Patanay in our planning division. Some succession planning, moving through that group. And then we are in the process of putting together, and we'll be advertising a special project manager for the director's office to their first project. We'll be looking at the procurement. So that includes ECS, CNS, and our procurement, and looking at some continuous improvement. So we'd appreciate and look forward to having some discussions with this group about what's working and what isn't working. Now is a perfect time for that as we move forward. So that's, I think. Anything else, Steve? All right.
Thanks, Jennifer. I don't know if I speak for the entire consultant community, but we'll miss Corina.
Yeah,
Yes, good.
we will too.
All right, our guests today are Steve Ocean and Anthony Castleman. Steve was born in New Jersey and grew up in multiple states. He attended Shadow Mountain High School here in the Valley and earned his bachelor's degree in civil engineering from the University of Arizona. He worked first at ADOT, then 20 years at 3 different engineering firms. Steve rejoined ADOT in 2012 and now serves as an assistant director of ADOT, overseeing the infrastructure delivery and operations division, which oversees all statewide construction project delivery. Anthony was born and raised in Phoenix. How many have been born in Arizona? That's in here. How many of you are over 65 years old and was born?
Not yet, not yet. Oh,
He has a bachelor, Anthony has a bachelor's degree in finance from ASU, and prior to ADOT, he worked 7 years as a legislative staff in numerous capacities at the House of Representatives. He joined ADOT in 2019 as the chief legislative liaison. He now represents ADOT at the state capitol with legislators, staff, lobbyists, and other stakeholders. So let's welcome Steve and Anthony.
Maybe I'll have Steve click for me just because I got notes in my hands too. I'm not as talented as Steve, so I'm gonna have to use notes. Steve's probably not gonna use notes. He's usually pretty good at going off the cuff, so. Well, again, I'll just introduce myself. Thank you, everybody, for having me here this morning. My name is Anthony Castleman. I work in the ADOT Government Relations Office. as was mentioned, I do have a finance degree that I've never utilized. So just because I'm presenting on funding and I have a finance degree does not mean that I'm an expert in this area by any means. So just to kind of set the stage for today, we're going to give some presentations that we presented to the legislature in November. November, we put on a legislative summit. It's something we talked about at this at the previous meetings here before. The goal of the legislative summit was to educate legislators on issues that we see there's definitely a struggle in understanding. So some of the topics we hit obviously were funding, but we also touched on project programming, project delivery, and then pavement conditions as well. So we really wanted to touch some of the hot topics at ADOT, as well as, again, just from my experience being across the street at the Capitol, some of the things that I see that there truly is a lack of understanding about the process. So this is just the first part of the presentation. I'll cover just the funding piece, and then Steve will cover some of the other stuff. There's three parts. The funding portion that we went over with the legislature. First, we talked about the funding that comes into the state's transportation system. Talked about where that funding goes, and then the final part we wrapped up with some of the key challenges that we face from a funding perspective. So again, first slide, where does the money come from? I think there's three main revenue sources. It's the HERF, the Highway User Revenue Fund, the State Highway Fund, which is made up of the gas tax, the used fuel tax, VLT, et cetera, et cetera. Then you've got the RARF, the Regional Area Road Fund, which is for the freeway systems in the MAG region, as everybody here knows, and then a lot of federal funding included in that as well. Next slide. There we go.
I'm going too fast. Sorry, Tony.
So this is just a slide showing a summary of HERF and some of the distributions that are in there. There's over 200 distributions. The HERF is established in the Constitution. Again, it's made up of some of those major funding sources: the gas tax, the use tax, and then the VLT, or the vehicle license tax. And then as I mentioned, some of those distributions down there listed at the bottom. A lot of the money gets distributed to cities, towns, and counties, and then a portion of it goes into the State Highway Fund, and then a portion gets distributed out to MAG and PAG. So, next slide. All right, this slide shows just historical HERF revenues. So I think the main key that I want to point out here is you look at that time period from 2007 to 2017. That's what we refer to as the lost decade. It's where the Great Recession hit. We saw a tremendous decline in the HERF revenues during that time period. And as you can see, it took us about 10 years to reach to get back to those 07 levels from 07 to 17. And then one of the other things I'll just point out here as well is you'll see some of the impacts of the pandemic in FY20 as well. There was a slight dip in the revenues there as well. Slide. All right, this is another representation of HERF. This just again shows the fund sources that flow into HERF. Again, you can see from the pie chart here that the fuel taxes and the VLT comprise the biggest portion of HERF. It's about 77% of HERF comes from those two items alone. Next slide. All right, this chart here took me a while to understand it, but I do understand it now. So this chart shows the composition of HERF revenues by year since the last time the gas tax was raised in 1991. You can see that bottom blue, the dark blue portion actually represents HERF revenues that are supported by the gas tax. You can see that is, the trend there is that it's declining as an overall component of the HERF revenues. And then you've got the top green section there, which represents the vehicle license tax for the VLT, which is an ever-growing component. Again, gas tax revenues decreasing since the 90s when it was last increased. Many of the reasons we've talked about, cars are more fuel efficient. One of the key components there, again, the gas tax is not indexed to inflation. And what's different about the gas tax versus the VLT is the VLT has sort of a natural index built into it because it's based on the value of the vehicle. So as the value of the vehicles go up, then the VLT increases. So again, it's got that sort of natural index in it. Slide. All right. As I mentioned, State Highway Fund, it's a key beneficiary of the Highway User Revenue Fund, or HERF. Last year, we brought in about $730 million into the State Highway Fund. So again, this is similar to a slide we showed earlier, kind of just shows the HERF distributions into the state highway fund. You know, again, looking down, I'll just skip down to the bottom there. The additional distributions from the state highway fund. Many of the things that goes to fund would be our operating budget. Again, there's a distribution to MAG and PAG, goes to fund our debt service, and then obviously a big component of that would be the monies that flow into the 5-year program. Slide. And then Regional Area Road Fund, or RARF, also known as the Maricopa County Transportation Excise Tax. Again, this would just go to support the regional system, so it would go to fund the freeways, public transportation, and arterials in the MAG region. Next slide. This is another slide showing the distribution of RARF. So as we've talked about in these meetings before, that half-cent sales tax is set to expire at the end of 2025. Again, freeways, public transit, arterials, multiple sources of revenue in there. You got the retail sources, or retail sales, I'm sorry, which we'll talk about a little bit later, which is a major component of that. And then the restaurant and bar sales as well. That is another big component. And then I'll just make a quick note at the bottom there that, yeah, ADOT does manage the RARF portion of the program. Next slide. Okay, this is again sort of historic revenues for Regional Area Road Fund. Last year we collected about $722 million. This year we're forecasting collecting approximately $750 million. Next slide. And then again, similar to HERF, put together this pie chart that shows the breakdown of RARF and the revenues that flow into RARF. Again, as I just alluded to, the retail sales are going to be a huge component of that, along with the purple slice of pie there, which represents the restaurant and bar. So as was the joke that was made at the summit, we appreciate all of the Christmas shopping that was happening during that time that allowed some of those revenues to flow into RARF. So next slide. All right, federal funds, significant federal funds that support the 5-year program. Last year, we received just over $1 billion. And as you can see from the wonderful image up there, it's the largest fund source.
I added that last night, Tony, just so you know.
No,
Yeah.
I looked at it, I'm like, that doesn't look next slide. All right, so IIJA, this is something we definitely wanted to touch on with the legislature. You know, initially when IIJA, so IIJA is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Sorry, I always get them mixed up because there's so many different acronyms being thrown around for this one. I think what we saw initially was there was a lot of rumors going around about IIJA and just how much money was actually going to come into Arizona. There was initially rumors that we were going to get an additional $5 billion. The key word there was the word additional. That was not exactly the case. So we had to work really to kind of dispel that myth. You know, I heard a lot from legislators and staff that, oh, ADOT's getting all this additional funding. What are they going to do with it? And there was additional funding that flowed in, but it was definitely not $5 billion more. So what this chart shows is that over the life of IIJA, we saw a benefit of a total of $5.3 billion. And this chart shows a comparison of the previous long-term authorization act, the FAST Act, to the comparison of the 5 years over IIJA. And again, it's a total of $5.3 billion. But what that actually represents in reality is about $1.3 billion additional over that 5-year period. So I think it was again around $250 million a year we were seeing. So again, just trying to dispel that myth that there was somehow billions of new dollars coming into the state. Slide. And then this slide here shows some of the programs. Again, you know, we're greatly appreciative of federal dollars, but as you probably heard, federal dollars come with the strings attached. Again, this chart shows a comparison of FAST Act versus IIJA, the previous long-term authorization versus the current one. I think what's key to point out here is when you look at an individual year, and we'll just look at that first year of IIJA, we were apportioned about $224 million more than the previous year under FAST Act. And it breaks down into 2 different components. It's the programs that were continued under the IIJA and the new programs under IIJA as well. think it's important to note that of that 224 million, 104 million of that was in new programs. And again, why that's key to point out is any of these new programs come with the new rules, new requirements. And it takes time for us to learn those things, takes time for those rules and requirements to actually be set in place. And then it takes some time for us to plan for those things as well. Slide. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about where does the money go. Again, I alluded to this earlier in the slides. A large portion of it is for our operating budget, debt service, and then of course the capital projects. All right, this gives you a breakdown of where the money goes. Again, you'll see the biggest portion is the capital budget, about 1.2 billion. And then you'll see 325 million for debt service, and then that operating budget, we broke out into two different categories there, about 250 a piece for operations and then maintenance SLI. Slide. Okay, and then what you see here is sort of the transition of the 5-year construction program. Each bar is a specific 5-year time period and a different 5-year program. Again, you'll see that significant jump there between FY 2022, 2026 and FY 2023, 2027. Again, a large part of that was due to the additional funding provided through IIJA. Slide. All right, now we're going to again talk about some of the economic headwinds. I think this is really important, really important topic for legislators to understand, because again, as these things sort of compound, they get worse over time. So. Something that probably a lot of the people in this room are familiar with is inflation. This chart here reflects the historical CPI, so just general inflation is not specific to construction.
That's Christine.
There is some tempering of inflation, but again, that doesn't really stop the fact that the prices have already increased. So we're not seeing a negative inflation. We're sort of operating off of a new baseline of prices. Slide. And then this chart is specific to the things that are associated with construction. So again, this is the construction cost index. And this chart depicts, that last quarter, year over year, we experienced a 19% increase in our costs. All right, so what's the result of all that? Well, again, the result is the diminishing purchasing power of the dollars that we have. So the dollar is worth less. This chart shows the diminishment of the dollar since the last time the gas tax was raised in 1991. And as you can see, $1 in 1991 is only worth about 43 cents today in FY23. So this slide just shows kind of that comparison of the purchasing power decreasing while the lane miles are increasing, which again, if those things are trending in opposite directions, that's never a good thing. So. Slide. All right, electric vehicles. Again, one of the things I talked about earlier was some of the things that we see impacting revenues, especially as it relates to the gas tax and the impact of the gas tax. This chart depicts EV models available between 2010 and 2023. And you'll see that there's quite a jump there. Again, from 2021 to 2023. There's a pretty big symbol of growth there. I think what this chart really shows is that manufacturers are out there producing electric vehicles. One of the things I pointed out to the legislature when we gave this presentation last week was that you probably look out your car window and don't see 144 different electric vehicle models out there. And you would be right. I think it's important to note that of that 144, one of the things that this includes is actually the different sort of variations in packages. So again, I just wanted to make that known. But again, all this chart is showing is that the development of EVs is out there and the level of investment that manufacturers are putting into developing electric vehicles. Slide. All right. In addition, we also used to think that, well, the EVs were growing, but there's not a place to charge them. This chart shows that is changing as well. People are putting them in their houses, and then we're also seeing an increased number of charging stations as well as individual outlets within those charging stations. In 2020, the US had about 32,000 charging stations. That grew to about 53,000 in 2022. If we had more current data, we feel that this number is continuing to grow. And especially within IIJA, I mentioned there were some new programs. One of those programs is a program specifically dedicated to electrification, and provided some funding to states to actually go install electric vehicle chargers. And this is really just kind of a summary of everything that we've talked about again. So ultimately everything kind of disrupts the fuel tax revenue. And a lot of these things are just little bits and pieces of the topics that I've already covered, talking about the impacts that electric vehicles have in the overall scheme of things. So that's it for me.
Thanks, Tony.
You want me to click for you, or are you good?
I'm good.
Okay.
Amerigo, is my volume okay? Okay. So Tony talked about the legislative summit, and I think it's really important that legislators understand, where we're at. So I'm going to talk about pavement condition. One thing a lot of folks don't understand is what's the difference between maintenance and rehabbing. And that red line in between preservation, maintenance, repaving, and full depth reconstruction is all in one bucket. So when you hear preservation, it means that we're out there crack sealing, we're fog sealing, but we're also rehabbing and repaving and doing full depth reconstruction. So it's really important for us to communicate that to legislators, because there is a difference. You guys all know what a fog coat is. Very important for maintenance. Crack sealing, I don't know where this is at, but this road's seen better days, but that's a normal crack seal job. Repaving, that's where the rubber really meets the road when we get good life out of a project, and that's what we really need to be doing. So type of treatment, again, red line is maintenance, and that's crack seals, fogging. We only use state funds for that. We cannot use federal funds for maintenance. So we need lots of federal funds to do our rehab projects. So that includes mill and repays, full depth reconstructions, and that's about what the mix is. Because we have so many federal lands, we can get 94.3% of our projects paid for by the feds. So vehicle equivalent, tire rotation, oil change, that's maintenance, right? You guys all maintain your cars? You wax it once in a while? No, you don't, because I see oxidation on some. Again, rehab, new tires, new engine, transmission. Again, that's where we really look for it. After 20 years, we need to do a rehab on most of our highways. So what's our trend? I like to say it's good, but it's 20% down over 10 years. We have 52.4% good in our interstates. Look where it was in 2010. We're 20% down. It gets even worse on our non-interstate NHS system. 36% down. 27% down on non-NHS. I meant NHS on the previous one. So we're not, the trend is not good. Another way to look at it, we do have a dashboard that shows all of our, routes, and for those that we have approximately 6,780 center line miles and 28,000 maintenance lane miles. That's a lot of miles. The good lane miles trend, again, overall in 2022, we have 29% in good condition. Any alarms going off yet? It doesn't resonate. People don't care. Pavement condition, you see that? There's lots of yellow out there. See any green? There's not a lot of green. And we report this every year. What do you think? Is this how we should go? Is this our new message? You guys aren't laughing. Come on. This is supposed to be lighthearted. But this is where we're going, Elijah. All right. What's needed? We really need to start repaving. And again, we have, I said 6,780. Well, I rounded up a little bit. 1 to 2% is what we do right now. That's about a 50 to 100-year cycle. How good do you think our pavement's going to be? Let's say that this is really the downward trend. If we just did 1 to 2%, which is what we're doing right now, that's our current trend. Again, 50 to 100-year. We have had some lifeblood the last 3 years from the legislature. Now, that was general fund money that they pumped in over the last 3 years. When we presented to the legislature, we did say thank you, because without that, we would have been even worse than we are right now. So we did want to make sure that with all those laws that they enacted in 21, 22, 23, we said thank you. What do we need to do? To maintain our current good condition, meaning flat line, if we got up to 5%, we'd have about a 20-year cycle. That would require 1 billion more a year. That is the flat line. Where we'd like to be, this would be awesome, 10-year cycle. But it'd be $2 billion. There's not a lot of appetite to find $2 billion more dollars. So that's it for pavement. Now, the other part that we wanted to, go ahead, Bill. I think it resonated with some. In fact, that was why we were asked to come back after we did the November one that you were present at, Bill. So it's resonating with some. I don't want to say that it's resonating with all. They really don't understand funding. I can share with you that they have no idea. And when you look at what Anthony presented, do you understand funding? No, it's difficult to understand that. And you guys in the room, I don't want to say you don't care, but you get projects, right? And you help us get them out. Do you know what the funding mix is? I guarantee you 90% of you don't, and that's okay. That's our job to do. But it is more important for legislators and us to explain this. I'm going to talk about programming. This is nothing new to this audience, so I shortened up this portion quite a bit. You guys know about MAG and PAG, right? So they do their programming, meaning they program projects in their region. We adopt it into our 5-year plan. Regional programming, again, population is greater than 200. MAG and PAG program, we do Greater Arizona. So anything in Greater Arizona, ADOT will do the programming for. Similar slide. All right, what are our takeaways from today? I got one, Anthony's slide. What does that do for us? Here's the direction of the trend. Yeah, that's my slide. I like that one. All right, and I can't stop. I always got to do a safety moment. Anybody know whose car that is? That's my ex-partner's car. So she got rear-ended. What's the guy doing that's standing in the middle of the road, right behind the car? What do you think he was doing before he hit Suzanne? Put it down, just drive. Here's our March safety calendar. This is at ADOT. So we have a safety contest for all the kids to draw cool pictures. What does this one say? Eyes down, phone down, put it down. What's Boshin's tagline? Just drive. I miss the times when there was clutches and 3 on the tree. We drive in a freaking living room. You know, everybody's got a Bose stereo. I mean, most people's cars are probably better than their living room stereos. So please put it down. I always put mine on the seat over on the side. I'm not a real big fan of those things that you pop up and you put on your dash, but if you have to Bluetooth, I do Bluetooth, but make sure you use your vehicle automation system. So that's it. Questions? And I'll try to answer Anthony's. I know he had to run to, oh, he's still here. Sweet.
Just address what Bill asked a little bit. So I think what Steve covered was the capital side of things. Where we have struggled with the legislature is on the maintenance side of things. So as those lane miles continue to increase, we have not gotten, and as inflation continued to increase, our maintenance budget, which you saw the above the line, has not increased as dramatically over the years. This was the first year that we asked for an inflation factor, and the executive included it in her budget. So we will see where that ends up with the legislative cycle of the budget sausage making process. But I think that's a critical piece that is missing, and that the legislators, they like the capital side, but they don't necessarily understand the maintenance side. And unless we're preserving and doing the things on the maintenance side, then it continues to erode on the capital side. So that's where we need help in explaining, I think, more so than on the capital side, although we need help there too.
I still want the capital side.
Yeah.
Especially if it would be up to Flagstaff or get more potholes, just hit every single one.
I'll be honest with you, we do offer that, and I know Anthony has offered that. The big interest has been 88, and the director's under pressure right now to open up 88. 88 gets 200 vehicles per day. I'm gonna shut up now. Carl,
Proves the RARP slide, but on some of the funding, I know there's a lot of rental tax that comes into that. That's going away, right, January 1st, 2025. Per the Governor Hobbs, and so, I mean, that was like 30-something% of the funding. You guys taking that into consideration for future?
Rental tax is a tough one just because there's still talks about it. So I'm more curious to see what happens this year with relates to rental tax. I think there's further discussions about it.
Cause you have two were there for rental properties, right? And I think it did come up to like 33% or something, so I was kind of surprised to see that and not have you discuss it, like what is our plan?
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
No, I think it's gonna come down to a lot of what happens this session. I don't think that conversation is completely closed yet.
I thought it was.
Well, I mean, they can always come back and change.
so Carl, that's something you might want to bring up with MAG on what they're gonna do with it.
Well, the city of Phoenix is dealing with that right now. They're losing like $90 million worth of revenue, but I mean, get it, it's for affordable housing and stuff, but nobody realizes how that 1.3% of that rental tax, how it affects everything.
Other questions?
So we have Prop 479, I think. ACEC sales tax extension November. Is ADOT taking any initiatives to help garner support for that proposition?
I'm gonna ask the director to answer that question, and my answer is we have to be agnostic, but director?
To educate, we can't, influence and lobby, but we're here to help and provide information as much as possible. There is a campaign, and we're supportive of that, obviously. So
Maybe what you need to tell people is how you personally vote.
well, I think
So Matt, we gave information today. So that information, if you can take it and do what you need to do with it, okay? Yes, okay. But unfortunately, we're Switzerland. Elijah,
noticed on the our sliding, or for our funding slide, that there was one line item that said not all of that funding goes to transportation. It said it goes to other sources. I wasn't aware that there was something pulling those monies out, sending them somewhere else. What is that other sources and why is it there?
Yeah, that I'll have to get specific information to you, but I can talk to Christine to get that information. Or CFO.
Is that, you know, if that's gonna be part of the next 479 funding, that there'll be some piece that doesn't go to transportation, even though it's a transportation exercise?
Yeah, I would think that there's still gonna be pieces of that are gonna exist, but again, I'd have to check into that.
The other question I have is, there's the 1 billion plus a year we get in federal funding, just over $1 billion. How much of that is the federal gas tax?
I don't know what the breakdown is necessarily, but you know, again, it's the formula funding, and then obviously with the federal funds, it's a lot of those discretionary grant programs too.
so Elijah, I do know that the federal gas tax does not pay its way anymore. It's been a negative for a long time, and this would be a great answer for Anthony Sarhan to do, but my guess is it's probably about 50%. I'm guessing.
Of the billion, 50% of it is the gas tax.
that we would pay. The rest of it
Comes from other taxes that you pay.
other places.
Yes.
We do have a question on one also, so ask.
I'm curious of what percentage, okay, so obviously there's a big push with federal grants and such towards safety initiatives, mobility, bike, ped. What percentage going forward is going to be involved in projects? And is there a larger appetite going forward within the state legislature for those programs that are kind of being pushed by the feds?
Oh, God. I don't want to unpack that. So, and
I can address
well,
it.
if you want to, yeah,
The legislature, for the most part, the legislature is not in support of some of the federal programs. And in particular, the carbon reduction program, bike and pedestrian programs. So yeah, they, even to the effect that the federal fund loss of those, they're okay with. So it's an interesting time.
and $1 billion. Did you see that?
Right.
$1 billion. And
This is the exact reason.
And what they, you know, the pedestrians and the bicyclists, there are vulnerable users. And yet they want to protect the vulnerable users. So you didn't hear from me, but they're talking out both sides of their mouth.
Yeah, it was just that ATSA sat in some of the vulnerable user, classes and such, and, it's obviously federal highway was there continuing to push those initiatives, a wide varying appetite among people in the audiences, obviously, depending on, where they were from, so.
I just hope everybody in this room appreciates the intestinal fortitude that our director has when she has to go across the street to the legislature. Dan,
So years ago, I think I remember that there was a champion. Well, there's probably been multiple champions over the past decades.
Marty Schultz.
Trying to fix, I meant elected
Okay.
officials. And the last one I thought was from Yavapai County years ago, from maybe the Prescott area. And every year, he was I forget the gentleman's name, but he's pounding on the table and we need to fix the funding and gas tax. When you presented this year, is there a champion or an emerging champion on that side that's a voice of reason?
You want me to answer that? So yeah, previously it was Noel Campbell. I think that's who you're talking about. Champions that I would say in the legislature right now for transportation, I think Representative David Cook is probably one of the better ones on the House side. Even Representative Teresa Martinez understands the importance of transportation. I would say she could be a good champion for transportation funding. On the Senate side, a little bit slimmer pickings there, but I would probably say somebody like Senator Frank Carroll would be a good person as a champion on the Senate side, who also understands the importance of transportation and has just a better understanding of transportation in general.
Amerigo, online caller.
Yes. So could Jennifer, Steve, or Anthony provide any updates on the current state budget balancing efforts in regards to the potential to claw back appropriated funds? This is from Kareem Data.
Of course it is.
Like I mentioned before, it's a sausage making process. So, the executive proposed some projects. The majority of the projects that she proposed were already bid or already under contract. And so looking at the savings, but, and bringing that back in. I have no idea. If I had a crystal ball, that'd be beautiful. So we just need to let it go through the process right now.
But to close on that, we're moving forward with the laws that are in place right now.
Projects are.
And Anthony Sarhan added some clarification. For perspective on the federal funding and the federal gas tax, the IIJA is funded in part by an approximately 90 billion transfer from the general fund to the highway trust fund. And the IAJA also transferred approximately 28 billion from the general fund into the transit account.
I'm more confused now.
Any other questions?
Mine's more of a kudos. So, I noticed one thing that was interesting that, so every year ADOT gets money for new lane miles. But it's always been based on the assumption, of paying a small amount for each new lane mile. I like the idea of indexing that because it really, you're not paying for that lane mile today, you're paying for that lane mile 20 years in the future. So you need that rate 20 years in the future. So we should have probably thought about that decades and decades ago, but just continue to encourage the legislature and the executive that's really important. That's a small step to start close that gap. So.
Thanks, Scott. Anything else?
Last thing, when you're talking to legislature, do they, I want to use the term like logic and math. When you talked about increasing lane miles, but decreasing the gas tax contribution. I mean, it's simply divergent, right? Is there some better way that we can explain it? You have bar charts, you have graphs, simple math.
I have to give Christine Ward a lot of credit, our CFO. So some of these are new. We haven't shown these before. I'm hoping they resonate with you more because, the dollar one, we've never shown something like that. When you see the lane miles and everything going in opposite directions, I think that's new, but like I said, we haven't done these legislative summits with them before. And I think that's a great step that Anthony started to take to try to have them.
Yeah, I would say, Christine first presented that at the Rural Transportation Summit where there are a lot of legislators there. And then we reiterated it in November at the summit. We were asked to come back and present this session at both the House and the Senate. So I think the committee chairs are recognizing it and wanting it to filter through their committee at least. But I think we need to get it to the greater legislature as well. And not just the committees, the transportation committees. I mean, they're the influencers. So the more that they can understand it, the better off. But I think we need to mainstream it more.
I noticed you showed that picture of somebody driving, put your darn phone down. Even in the presentation that was back in November, you could see legislators, man, gee, that was good. And they're, that phone. As much as it would be challenging, do we need to go more one-on-one, or one-on-two or three? And if there's anything we can do to help, please let us know. I think all of us in the room would be more than willing to help.
I know one that was pretty engaged, and that was Gress. So he made it clear what he wanted. And that's 651.
All right, thank you, Steve. Justin, any comment? ACEC.
It takes several times to hear something. My name is Greg Haggerty. I'm serving as the chair of the board for ACEC. It takes several times for something to sink in, so we're hitting it again, folks. Brace yourself. Many of you were just at the round tables, but this is the spiel you need to hear because it orients our thoughts that leads to action. Purpose. ACEC Arizona has a purpose. It's to be a single united voice for this industry, to push things forward for the benefit of the industry, for the benefit of society. That matters. We put that through a long-term direction that helps put some general ideas of what we want to accomplish as an organization over a period of time. That led to a strategic plan from a new board. That strategic plan has 4 agendas. One of them is legislative. Another one is agency, working with agencies like ADOT. It's a good partnership. Third one is collaborative coalitions. and communications to our members and to those who can stand shoulder to shoulder on issues so that we get a louder voice, so that we can bring reason where there's insanity. This industry needs it. Our society needs it. The other side of things is basically operational excellence. That's what we're doing to just clean our own house and take care of our own organization here. There's three roundtables that just took place in January. We had over 70 individuals from this organization participate in those roundtables. I don't remember that type of number in a good long time. Shows that there is interest. It shows that there is heart. It shows that it is important. And when you ask people to come, they will. So get ready for more asks. They're coming your way. We had some survey responses that went out to those participants. So some responses have come back in with some good thoughts and ideas. Our board is meeting this Thursday, tomorrow, to go ahead and incorporate some of those ideas into the strategic plan for taking steps forward. Local liaisons for Northern and Southern Arizona were some of the big pieces that came through those communications in Flagstaff and Southern Arizona. This is not the state of Maricopa. We deal with the state of Arizona and what we're doing as an organization. So we're going to reflect that. Local key issues and concerns were a big part of what came in as well from some of those things. But ultimately, I want to just hit on the fact that there are some things that are going on and taking action that I want you to be aware of for things that are going on and coming up. 3 stadium tours. We're talking about building a workforce. We've got 3 state stadiums that are opening up their doors and bringing young middle school kids in. Because of some of the work that started at our Roads to Streets conference, it led to actions. Now it's leading to results of kids. We just had a fantastic Future City event. Nikolai Aline, you did a great job. That was fantastic. 147 judges from our industry in the room helping kids. Fantastic work. We have the largest LEAP class that I ever recall. Why? Because we're building a workforce and we're building leaders. Why? So they can graduate? No. So they can lift up and carry the industry forward, because we need leaders and we got to invest in them in each of our organizations. AZBTR, thank you for what you're doing down there to make sure that that sunset effort and that we have a licensure, because fact is licensure matters. So thank you for what you're doing and quietly behind the scenes in that effort. We've got a new state PAC. On your table, there's a code here. Flip that thing into your phone and open up your wallet and give some money to this new state PAC, because that is a mechanism for getting the attention of some of those legislators. That's the tool for getting them in the room, Bill. That's how we get them in the room. We get ready to cut a check to some of these people and names of people that have an ear, a willingness to do something. So get your checkbook out. We've raised 80,000 already to that effort for some of what's going on in there. 479 has been mentioned. Absolutely. You got to bring it. It's a must win for this industry. The RTA in Southern Arizona is also a must win. Got to get that thing passed and move forward. Pinal County road maintenance, another big element, must win. So we've got some work ahead of us. It's not all going to be done by one person. I'll guarantee you that. It won't be done by 12 people on a board. It's going to come from the industry going shoulder to shoulder and carrying things forward. I'm asking you to do that. Asking for the continued partnership with ADOT. It's a good partnership. We appreciate the open-mindedness to listen to some of the concerns. We are dealing with things that we have never dealt with before. Thank you for listening. Looking forward to more of your contributions and more of your engagement going forward. Thank you, folks.
All right, thank you. Justin, anything else?
Thank you, Greg. Okay, so it's rare that we actually get to have a presentation that I'm like, oh, these are my people. So obviously, I am the designated lobbyist for ACEC Arizona, so I get to spend a lot of time down at the legislature too. I'm so sorry that Director Toth has to spend as much time as she is currently spending down there. But here's the good news, we can help. As you may or may not have heard, at least a little bit today, that ADOT is going through their sunset process. It is a very complicated process. I will not go through it here. However, it is considered in both the House and the Senate. So it's not just one hurdle, it's 2 hurdles to get through. So I do want to make you aware of the 2 bills that are running, one in the House, one in the Senate, that is with regard to the sunset process. We need to get online. We need to get down to the legislature, and we need to help support ADOT and the continuation of this agency. If you cannot make it down to the legislature, I've got good news for you. If you have a pen and paper ready, please write these down. Senate Bill 1184. SB 1184.
You're gonna send this out, right?
Absolutely. But I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't give my announcements. Yes, I absolutely will be, and I'll be including a few more bills too. But I do want you to know, these are really important though, because one, that's already been heard in the Senate. And today, House Bill 2037 is being heard in the House. That's today at 2 p.m. Hearing room 2 or 3, I believe. It's very, very important that we sign in support of these bills. Not only will I be sending out the bill numbers, but also how to go ahead and register, set up an account at the legislature. Thankfully, you don't have to go down there anymore. You can do it all online. And how to sign in support of these bills. It does matter. Even if the legislators that poor Director Toth is out there in front of taking slings and arrows from every time she goes down there, even if they aren't reading the reports, even if they aren't paying close enough attention, the one thing that they do look at is the number of sign-ins for, neutral, or against on every bill. It is a down and dirty way to see what exactly is the public thinking and how do they respond. So it's very important that if you do nothing else, that you sign in support of these bills. And I'll also be sending a few more that's with regard to the BTR, as Greg mentioned earlier. So that's very, very important, and you'll be seeing that email up shortly. The other thing that I want to mention is Prop 479. How do we get involved? Greg gave you a really great resource. That QR code on your table there goes to the ACEC Arizona State PAC. That is our PAC right here in this house. If you would like to give money to that PAC, those PAC dollars are going directly to support Prop 479 because we can. We can do more than support by showing up and using our words. We can also support by writing those checks. And one thing that I can tell you is that by giving to that PAC, because it is our PAC, I can tell you exactly where those dollars are going. If you give to another PAC, I can't guarantee that those dollars aren't going to go to pay a consultant, which we need. But I can tell you exactly where those dollars are going. So I think that's very important, and I hope that you'll consider it. We can take individual donations. We can also take corporate donations. So if you're shaking the pennies out of your pockets, you can go shake your firm's pennies too. The other thing too, please come out and support Prop 479 by showing up at the Connect Maricopa official launch. Connect Maricopa is the primary campaign that is supporting Prop 479. I know you've heard me talk about them before. On February 27th, they are doing a live launch event. I will send this out as well, but just so you know, February 27th at 9 a.m. It'll be at Multi Studio, and that's over on 3rd Street. It'll be great if we can get a lot of people there. It is a press conference, so it's very important to have a really good showing. So I'm hoping that you will take a few minutes to join us down there, even if it's just for the photo op, but come down and please show your support for Prop 479. It is very, very important. So I've told you a lot just about what we were talking about today. I will absolutely be sending out that information so that you can track it. It's easy for you to track and it's easy for you to take action. If you have any questions, please, please, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I am more than happy to help. And I can tell you, in black and white what it is because I don't work for an agency.
Quick question.
Jenny.
Is anything happening with the campaign for the RTA next?
That I'm looking into.
Okay.
I have not heard much yet.
Okay.
I have not heard much yet, but I know that is a very big deal. So I will be sharing that information with you as soon as I have access to that.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. Oh, Carl.
It took me less than 20 seconds to give money to that. So.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Carl.
Pretty easy, so.
Less than 20 seconds.
Can you reiterate when the launch party starts again?
Of course. February 27th at 9 a.m. It is a press conference and there will be a reception afterwards. Mayor Gallego will be there. Governor Hobbs, I believe, will be there. And Mayor Giles will also be there from Mesa. So you do know that we do have political support and backing here. It's not just us out there kind of, beating the streets. There is a lot of support for this. And obviously it's very, very important to our industry. So I'm hoping that you will, not only, show with your faces, show with your fingers by signing in and supporting these bills. And also, if you can, show with a few dollars. Every dollar counts. So any more questions? All right. Well, you know where to find me. So if you need anything, of course, please reach out to Marigo and I. We're here to help. And thank you guys for spending your morning with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you all for attending. Steve for presenting. Pass our things on to Anthony, if you will. Jennifer, appreciate you attending, and Greg mentioned LEAP. ADOT has a person taking the LEAP class, so appreciate that as well. I think everybody here knows Bruce Kay. He has officially retired. He's been a geotech in the area for probably
150 years.
40 years, over 40 years at least. So maybe we can get him back to a different another meeting just to wish him well in his retirement. Don't miss next month's meeting, March 6th. Don't want to miss any of them, so you don't want to miss next month's either. So appreciate your attendance and do be safe out there.
Meeting next
I don't know. Who's invited? You.
David, it's just eight. Me and who?
Like I was supposed to be involved.
Talks about what we're gonna say when these appropriations.